Welcome to Friday. It is the 21st day of February 2025. As we go into the weekend, as we go through the next several days, after going through a lot of cold and a lot of winter really across the whole nation, we are going to see a nice warming trend across the region. Temperatures started to really moderate for a lot of you yesterday, and overnight low temperatures last night, not as bitterly cold, although there's still plenty of cold in the nation's midsection. But for the Rockies in the west, it's all about flow of air from the Pacific. So we're going to kick into gear this warming trend, as we mentioned yesterday. Unfortunately, there will be windy areas, especially from late Saturday through Monday. It's going to get pretty windy. Now, that wind will warm us up. That wind will melt quite a bit of snow and ice. So there's one good thing about the wind, and it'll be that. But along I-25, I-80, along the east slopes of some of the mountain ranges, be ready for the wind. The snow chances are mainly going to be confined to the high mountains of the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies this weekend. Into Monday, there might be a few snow showers as little Pacific moisture moves in, but there's really not much snow other than, as we'll show you here in a minute, early today, central Colorado is going to get a bit of snow. But once these systems move out, we really don't have much until a fast system moves in through Tuesday and Wednesday. And that system is mainly going to race through, bring a shot of snow to the central and northern Rockies, but it's in and out very quickly. I don't think its impacts will be very large, and it may be several days after that before we see any significant weather again. So just think of the weather pattern just kind of taking a really big, deep breath here over the next week or so after this big Arctic outbreak and all the weather associated with it. So there's going to be a quiet stretch for a while. Take advantage of it. We really don't have much going on from this weekend, probably through next weekend. After that, things get a little more interesting. Satellite photo this morning shows a lot out here in the Pacific. Looks kind of scary, but with the flow straightening out, these systems will be hitting the Pacific Northwest, kind of will get chewed up a little bit and really won't have a chance to form a trough or take a dip into the Great Basin or the Rockies. So what you're likely going to see is this Pacific moisture hung up along the coastal areas of Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest. Now the map this morning across the United States, not quite as scary, but you can see all the light blue here. This is all for cold advisories over still a large part of the nation, now into the deep south. We have the high wind watches now in effect for the I-80 and I-25 corridors of Wyoming. Here's that little patch of winter weather going down Interstate 70 in Colorado this morning. And these green areas is because of snow melt. Snow and ice melt in this warm up could cause some localized flooding. Mainly what you're talking here is creeks and rivers could get some ice jams. And since the ground is really frozen from the cold soaking of the last several weeks, you're not going to melt that snow into the ground. It's going to run off, and so you'll need to watch those drainages there. But after a long outbreak of Arctic air and a lot of snow in these areas, you're going to have that concern. Then if you take a look at that small area there in Colorado, there's just a little patch of snow with this Pacific wave coming through this area here. So Denver, along I-70 in the mountains and out onto the plains, a bit of snowfall here, putting down some fresh snow just in time for some weekend of skiing down there. Snowpack, we said yesterday would give you an update on the region. And what you want to take note here is look that basically between these two black lines here, there's really been a big improvement in snowpack because the storm systems have been tracking through this area here. And anywhere you see green or blue, snowpack is doing well. It's doing pretty good. Yellow with you're in striking distance. When you get into orange and red here, you're certainly way behind. So it's this zone right here that is seen the best improvement, but there really won't be much snowpack buildup at all for the next 7 to 10 days, a little bit, but not a lot. When we take a look at the change, now a lot of times I show you an anomaly map. This is not an anomaly map. It looks like one, but this shows the 24-hour change in temperature from today through tomorrow. So you can see the whole nation has a significant change in temperature by a lot in some areas down here. So this is how much the Pacific can replace the Arctic and bring about a big warm up. So temperatures are starting from very low and have a long way to go up, but this is going to bring relief to the whole lower 48 to catch a break. When we look at where we are today, there's that little pesky low bringing some snow to parts of Colorado. But on top of that, it's a west to east zonal flow now developing across the nation. And that's going to hold through the weekend and into early next week. So this is the moisture with the current wave. Most of this happens really over the next 12 to 18 hours or so. Then there's that moisture pushing in the Pacific Northwest, dry conditions elsewhere, and that's what the snowfall totals look like. So just around Denver and west of Denver, there's a pocket of some real heavy snow there. By Monday, that zonal flow continues west to east. Notice we've got these little ripples. These little ripples coming through will make it really windy along and east of the divide. A stronger ripple here is what comes through late Tuesday and into Wednesday, and there's the wind. This is the accumulated wind gusts from today through Monday. The worst of this wind is Saturday afternoon through Monday afternoon. So the wind today really isn't much of a factor. For the start of Saturday, not much of a factor. But Saturday afternoon into Sunday and Monday, gonna get windy from the Dakotas to the Front Range of Colorado, out into the plains, then your usual wind-prone areas, South Pass, I-80, I-25, near Cody here to Meeteetse, South Pass, then along the Rocky Mountain front of Montana. Warm winds, but very strong winds, so be on the lookout for those. There's your wave for Tuesday. Again, not very impressive. It will produce, though, a little bit of weather. A lot of cold air still sitting up here north of Hudson Bay, but that Arctic air stays locked up. When you have a pattern like this that's fast west to east, the Arctic air really can't have much of an opportunity to get too far south. So it's all about the Pacific next week in terms of temperatures across the nation. There's your moisture for Tuesday. So you can see the path of it. Will bring some snow to the mountains. We'll get a little more snow up into Montana, the Dakotas, parts of Wyoming here. But again, it's not much of a big system. And along and south of I-80, I-70 here, very quiet weather. That's what the snowfall looks like Tuesday into Wednesday. Then further out, by next weekend, things start to get a bit squirrely. We're going to see a brief period of high pressure come into the west. So by late next week and next weekend, it's going to be pretty mild. Although that cold air that's still sitting up there sort of gets aligned north-south again. So this will allow cold air to spill into the northern plains and Great Lakes. Next weekend could bring a significant snowstorm to this part of the nation here. That needs to be watched. We have a little low breaking off heading into Southern California. Then we have this next low coming in behind it. So basically, this takes us through next Saturday. Beyond that, it gets really complicated. We're going to see those lows come off the West Coast, and there may be a merger. Will the pattern look like this by next Tuesday? This is March 4th. I don't think it'll look just like this, but the general idea here is that somewhere in this vicinity here, these two lows will likely get together, or one will end up being stronger than the other. Then we get this high pressure configuration here and this high pressure configuration here off the coast. So what happens is you start to bottle up the jet stream flow, and more often than not, it's going to want to curve down and form a trough over the nation. So as we get into 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th of March, this pattern off the Pacific will start to want to settle into the Great Basin and Rockies. So we're just going to have to wait and see how things come together. But we're talking more than 10 days out. So a lot's going to change. A lot's going to look different here. But when we look at big picture items, we want to take a look, first of all, sometimes we show you this, haven't showed you this in a while, the Madden-Julian oscillation, tracking how things go out in the Western Pacific. These cycles tend to go 30 to 60 days to where you are in certain phases, and we associate phases numbers 1 through 8 with certain patterns during certain times of the year. Now, it's kind of hard to read this, but what you want to pay attention to is this red line. These numbers here represent dates. So this is about where we are right here. And we're going into phase 8 and into phase 1 and 2 right here over the course of the last days of February. And this, you can't see the numbers here, but this is for those first weeks of March. So we're going from phase 8 to phases 1 and 2 in the weeks ahead. So when we take a look at these phases, these periods of thunderstorms and active weather out in the Western Pacific that affects patterns in North America later on, when we associate that with long-term analysis, what does climatology say when you're in phases 8 going to 1 to 2? Well, it looks like this. For the February, March, April period, phase 1 on the left side here represents temperature. So here's the warm-up coming right here, that if you want to see how things are unfolding, while the rest of the nation here is overall colder. So we're going from phase 8 to phase 1, and then notice how much colder the nation is in phase 2. So if you look at phase 1 here, basically this is the next 10 to 12 days. Going into phase 2 is days 12, probably to days 24 to 30. Precipitation-wise, phase 1, the green shows above, there's a signal of above average precipitation. Again, this isn't a forecast. I'm not showing the forecast. I'm showing you what the trends are climatologically. So if you kind of step away from the models and just look at what history shows can happen when you go into these phases, these are the tendencies. So in phase 1 and phase 2, the Western United States has quite a few patches of green, which is above average precipitation as we go into the next 30 days or more, along with, especially in phase 2, going back to colder again. And when we look at the Pacific North American oscillation, we see that right at the beginning of March, the average PNA is in the negative phase, which correlates very well with that. So we're just going to have to wait and see. In the meantime, there won't be too much weather to talk about for the next week or so. Have a great weekend.